All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kingston Nwosu. I'm the leader for the Finance One Goal Group for the UK. And we are organizing this webinar in conjunction with the US/Canada team. So it's a good thing to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining. Today, we are discussing a topic, navigating the cost of living crisis. The topic kind of speaks for itself, but to give you some context, we all live in the global environment, whether in the UK or in the US or in Canada. And the peculiar thing about this time is that it cuts across. It's not just one country. It's not like African countries are suffering and the developed world is, everyone is having a bit of it for different reasons, So people blame it on Putin and say, oh, it's this war that is causing energy crisis. That's one side to it. Some people blame it on Brexit, that we shouldn't have had Brexit. It's what is causing the crisis, Some people blame it on the prime minister. They had a mini budget that was very bad and it cost, whatever the reasons are, we are here. There's cost of living crisis, and that compasses whether it's mortgage rates that are, going up due to the fact that interest rates are on the rise. There is energy costs that is skyrocketing. There is cost of fuel have gone up. You go to the shops, things are not as they were before because it's more expensive. And this is something that is eating into the disposable income of everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. The money you have to spend is automatically cut short by inflation that's at over 10% now. So it's a topic that cuts across everyone, and it's a good thing that we're here to discuss it. And I'm glad that you all have been able to come in, give some time to be able to discuss this topic with us today. Our speaker is here. Thank you for coming, and thank you to Micheal, who I'll be introducing soon. So we go straight into it. Micheal will take up the conversation from, anytime from now. He'll speak for about 40 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes we'll have questions. Or if you prefer for us to have questions in between, we can do that as well. But before I pass over to Micheal, I'll just read his profile here. Micheal is enthusiastic about empowering people to live a life of purpose and to create surplus wealth to live a measured lifestyle. He is a seasoned entrepreneur, starting companies including Green Towers Limited, Eroco Limited, Afrochef Limited, Above Need Limited, and other ventures that meet customers' needs, consistently supplying quality services and value. He has an academic and professional background in financial accounting, in law, management accounting, and investment management. That's a very good combination, Micheal. He has built a career over 10 years, leading sustainable strategies, delivering value through multiple small, medium, and large-scale projects across legal practice, retail banking, UK civil service, and investment banking. At present, he is a vice president and a product owner at JP Morgan. I'm going to hand over to you now, Micheal, but the first thing I want to talk about is, what is product owner? Because I don't know. So if you could use 30 seconds to tell us what that is, and then you go into the rest of your presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so 30 seconds. The role of a product owner is to manage a particular product for any business. It could be a tech product, it could be a market product, and it's to get the best return for that product for the benefit of the business and the team. That is it in a nutshell. So I make sure that whatever we've invested in that particular product, we get the most return on investment for a particular business period. I hope that answers your question, Kingston.
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Please go ahead with your presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I'm hoping that we have a fun session. I know I've only got just about 40 minutes. I'll make sure I stick to the time. But I want to make this as informal and as hopefully beneficial for yourselves and myself as possible. So I'll throw in a few games as we go along. I'll share my screen just to give us a page holder for the topics that we'll be going through. And, just feel free to ask questions as we go along. And then at the end, time permitting, we can go through a lot more detail. So why am I talking to you guys about the cost of living crisis? I think I'll start by putting a little bit of context to it. In terms of the idea that we are living in a state of crisis, as it were. What is the crisis? Let's face it. It's something that is, unstable. Everyone's, we had stability for a period of time. Now there's a lot of uncertainty, either in markets with regards to prices, in the job market with regards to, job security, investments, returns, and all of that. So this uncertainty is what is creating the crisis. Now, how does that affect each and every one of us as working professionals, either in the UK or Canada? That's what we're going to try and understand. But even better, how can you actually create surplus in this time of scarcity? So you can actually flip the scenario on its head and actually look at it in a way that you can actually come out on top long term. So that's what I'm hoping that each and every one of us will be able to take away from our sort of discussion today, that rather than focus on the scarcity or intended scarcity that will come out of this crisis, is to actually look at it like, how can I come out on top, creating surplus, not just for myself, but for obviously for those around me as well. So I think that's a key thing that I'm hoping we can all take away today. Now, so let's bring some context into this. What's really happening? I think the first thing I would like to say is that everyone, each and every one of us, Martina, Micheal, Bonlale, Eunice, we are all investors, right? Whether we choose to or not, we are actually all investors. And I'll give you a reason why I take that assumption, right? So every day, you go out, you spend your money, you spend your time on something or with someone, you're actually investing. An investor is not someone that just, buys, stocks in the stock market or holds, government bonds or things like that. You're actually investing through the economic activities that you participate in. Hence the reason why, because of the instability, you feel either fear or greed, or you're anxious, or you're just like, I really don't care. Or you could just be complacent, like, I'm just going to bury my head in sand and hopefully this crisis will pass and I'll raise my head from the sand and it will all be over. But the reality is that, as human beings, we tend to react to any situation. So the question then becomes, how do we manage our emotion throughout this period of crisis? Because one thing is for certain, it will always pass. I think for most of us, faith, either Christian, Muslim, or any other faith, one thing that is, I think, universal to all faith is the idea of time and period. Knowing that, there will be a season of harvest, a season to plant, the season to wait for it to grow and all of that. There are time and seasons to everything. So the crisis we're experiencing now will pass. I remember back pre-08, I was living in London at the time, and 2006, there was so much money going around in the city. Everyone was having a great time. 07, things started to slow down. 08, things were bad. 09, 010, things were very bad. But even in that period, a lot of my friends made a lot of money because they invested hugely in properties. Some actually bought stocks that were considerably undervalued at the time because the market reacted, and just for a bit of context for those that are not in the financial sort of field, markets, so companies that are listed and they publicly trade their stocks, there is a lot of assumption that goes into the pricing of the stock in the market. So the pricing of the stock in the market doesn't have anything to do with the underlying value of the asset, which is the bricks and mortar of that company, how they trade, the number of stocks they have in their warehouse. And it doesn't, usually it's very divorced from that. It's just someone speculating that this company is going to be what X amount and all that. So when the market feels a bit, tense, people tend to drop certain stocks. So you can then determine, the value of this company is actually worth a lot less than what is being traded for. So you can actually make a buy or sell decision in that instance. But the reason I use that as an example is that whatever action you take is actually within this pendulum that we all see here today. You're either afraid, you act based on that fear, You're anxious, you act based on that, or you're neutral by staying put, and inaction is also an action, or you're just complacent and you just bury your head and like, I don't want to know, or you get greedy and you go out and splash, you know. So we're going to act or react based on our emotions. So I think the first thing that I'm hoping that we can take from our discussion today is, how do we manage our emotions during this period of crisis, right? For a lot of us that are professionals, we're thinking, oh, I was going to ask for a pay rise come January, right? Or I was going to move role. Should I move role? Should I not move role? How do I manage this? And I'm feeling either anxious, afraid, or what do I do? How do we manage our emotion? I think the first thing I would suggest is understand the situation in the context of time. Knowing that this period will pass is the first way to be able to manage your emotion. So there is this human behavior that we think whatever is happening now is going to happen forever, right? Pre-COVID, you know, there was this boom or whatever it was, and there was this perception that was going to happen forever. During COVID, there was the perception that, oh, we're going to be locked down forever. You know, so always check your emotion with regards to a time box that, look, whatever is happening now in terms of these cost of living crisis with regards to energy, property market, the job market, it will pass. So that's the first thing I want to say and share with each and every one of us. It will pass. So keep our emotions in check, number one point. So now that we've set a scene, you know, we know that each and every one of us are investors. We know that based on, you know, our emotions, we're back to, you know, we are bound to react or act in a certain way, and that we can actually control our emotion with regards to time. So let's go into some meat of it. And some of you might wonder, like, you know, why are we talking about wealth management? You know, there's a crisis. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get through the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, maybe 2 years, and you're talking about wealth management. I'll tell you why. So for a group of us, the context of cost of living crisis is negligible. And when I say negligible is that it has zero impact on some of us. And I'll, you know, happily include myself in that category, hence the reason I'm talking today. And what do I mean by that? If you are in a position that you've created a moat for yourself, which is like a safe for yourself in terms of your finances, I'm going to speak in the context of finance, money, you've created that moat, an all-weather moat. So regardless of whether inflation goes to 20%, 30%, 40%, it doesn't shake you, right? So let's pick some of the big ticket items. A mortgage. So you're, you know, you live in Canada, or you live in, you know, the US, or you live in the UK. Mortgage is one of the biggest, even rent is one of the biggest expense that we actually shell out for when the salary or return on our investment come in, the biggest. Next will be the car, right? Another big outgoing. So if you bought a car on finance, I think for some of us in the UK, you know, we pay 300, 400 pounds a month, you know, to service a car. For some of us, we pay 1,200, you know, 1,300 to pay for a mortgage, right? So these are the big ticket items. Now, let's put a scenario where both big ticket items are actually owned by yourself. So you don't have a mortgage to pay, and you don't have a car note or a car finance to pay. That eliminates that sort of big ticket item that would make you anxious because of change in interest rates or whatever it is that is shifting the market. Again, you've created that moat for yourself, so it doesn't affect you that way. Now, let's come to the other part of living in any country, which is your daily expenses. So you're going to spend on heating, you're going to spend on water, you're going to spend on transportation. So you buy fuel, diesel, whatever it is. You know, you spend on clothing, all of these items. One would argue, okay, fine, You're protected from, the mortgage, you're protected from the car. What about the other daily expenses? Those are going to shoot up. How come you're not affected by that? It's pretty simple. If you're not paying for any of it, then you're fine. Now, what do I mean by not paying for any of it? Of course, you're paying for it, but you're not paying for it by your effort, because you have investments structured to cater for all of these aspects of your life. And even if you have a family, you structure it in a way that it supports your family. So if there's a 10, 20% tick and you've adjusted your moat, your financial safeguard to do that, you're unaffected by it. And this may seem a little bit theoretical, and I'll come to a lot of details about how shortly, but it's just to set the scene for us that you can actually thrive, create surplus for yourself in a time of scarcity. Now, going back to the example I made pre-08, when we had the first financial crash, which I witnessed, a lot of us, a few friends of mine, same as we're all in this group today, decided to take a position. Do we put our head in the sand, going back to the emotion? Do we be complacent? Do we panic, pack our bags and run back to Nigeria? Or should we weather the storm and actually even thrive in it? Fortunately, we went for the latter, and today we're smiling. But that was in 2000 or pre-08, 2009. So it's a pretty long time ago. But guess what? Because of the actions we took at that point in time, we're reaping the rewards even till today. So much that the shift in the market with regards to the cost of living crisis doesn't affect any of us in that group at all. And I'm hoping that for each and every one of us on the call, that we can take that as a lesson learned and say, can I put myself in that position? If not, within the next 6, 7 months, 12 months, 24 months, maybe 5 years down the line. Because guess what? There will be another crisis. Okay, not to be the bearer of bad news, but yes, it will come. So as the sun rises and it goes down, there will always be crisis. There will always be something that would come up. How severe it is depends on how well, or how severely impacted you are, depends on how well you've actually protected yourself. So that's why I'm talking about wealth management, right? So put yourself, each and every one of us, put yourself in that position that you see yourself as a wealthy person, looking at the 4 pillars that we have here. So one is income, the other is asset, third, time, and the fourth is leverage. So I'll quickly talk about these in the interest of time. So income is what obviously you get from your salary, your monthly salary, net, any sort of taxes that have been taken. And then obviously net, whatever expenses that you've, incurred, i.e. rent, mortgage, car, gas, whatever, net that amount. You take that net and then you invest it. And we'll come to some of the investments that you can put and how you can structure your investment moving forward to protect yourself, creating that moat moving forward. And then the other is asset. So you get your sort of assets that would sort of grow in value. So I've got assets that, I don't earn any physical sort of income from it, but the value keeps increasing over, guess what? Time. And a combination of these assets and time, I could actually leverage them for future investments. So I've got these assets. These assets, I acquired them years ago. They've increased in value over time. Now I can go to the bank and say, look, I've got these assets. These assets, are now worth £300,000, £500,000. I want to take a loan of £100,000, and I'm going to negotiate the rate with my bank manager. Yes, you can actually negotiate a high value loan rate if you are a certain kind of customer. So it's understanding that these pillars are available to each and every one of us with the objective of growing our net worth to meet whatever financial goal that we aim for ourselves. And for me, it's creating that moat and that secure financial position to support myself, my family, and those that I love, including any charity adventures that I decide to go on, because I'm sort of that way inclined. Now, we've talked about, obviously, the emotions, we've talked about wealth, we've talked about the different pillars. Now, I've put some questions here, which I'm going to ask the audience, and I'm hoping that you can ask some questions as well. And two questions. So the first one here is, can you create wealth just by earning money alone? So I'm going to encourage each and every one of us, just post your responses in the chat. Let's see what our answers are. Can you create wealth just by earning money alone? So from your salary, income. The second one, is it necessary to save and invest to create parallel streams of income? Please post your answers in the chat, and then we'll talk a little bit more about these as we go along. Thank you. I can see some responses are coming through. So Adeyemi says yes. Neka says no. Abimbola says yes. No to question 1, yes to question 2. Kingston says no to question 1, yes to question 2. Eunice says 2, yes. Adekemi says 2, yes. Okay, so at least we're getting somewhere with this, right? So question 1, I think broad consensus is no, right? Can you create wealth just by earning a salary? Absolutely not. Because guess what? A lot of us, even those that are in so-called high earning positions, our salaries do not track inflation, the silent killer. You may get, for some, 10% increase, but that 10% increase, you might be jubilating like, oh my God, it's great. Inflation is just 2%. That's the nominal inflation. There is a nominal inflation, which any country sets and then sort of publishes that figure. So, inflation has gone 4%, 5%, 7%. But there is actually the real inflation, which actually filters through to everything that we buy, everything that we invest, either our time, effort, and money in. So there is no way your salary income will actually help you create wealth. And obviously, as most of you responded to question 2, yes, it is necessary for you to save and invest to be able to create that parallel source of income. Now, here we are in a bit of a dilemma. Inflation is eating your salary. Where is that surplus going to come from for you to be able to save and invest? So we'll come to that as we go along. But let's move on a little bit. Let's put ourselves in a little bit of a timeline. I think for all of us, or for most of us, it's more than likely that we are actually in what we call the accumulation phase of our wealth journey. So with regards to wealth management, they got 3 main phases, right? So you have the accumulation phase, the preservation phase, and you have the distribution phase. Now, the accumulation phase, which I believe most of us as working professionals fall into, is when you are actually actively working, in a job to create, or generate income, but you're also working towards future milestones. So your investments should be positioned to help you long term. Now, long term, i.e. for most of us, would be retirement, which we don't really like talking about, but that is the reality of it, right? What are we working for? Are we just working to one day hopefully get married, one day hopefully buy a car, one day hopefully buy a house? We're actually working towards when we can no longer afford to work, which is moving on to the next phase, preservation, because believe it or not, we're all going to get old at some point, and we wouldn't have this sort of bustling energy that we have today. So coming to that realization, you appreciate that the accumulation stage of your life is actually a phase. And then you move on to the preservation phase, which is like you're nearing your retirement. And then obviously you hit retirement, you can no longer work. You can then move to the distribution phase, which is obviously you spend, you go on a cruise, visit grandkids and all that kind of funny stuff. So yeah, so those are the 3 phases of our wealth management journey. So let's do a quick recap at this point. We've talked about our emotions with regards to the crisis or, dangerous situations or times that we live in, we've talked about the 4 wealth pillars. We understand that by earning a salary alone, we will not go very far, if anywhere at all. And we've now talked about the 3 stages of wealth management. Okay, how does this help us? It still doesn't increase my salary or teach me how to earn or increase my salary. We'll come to that. Let me bring our attention to the last few words on the accumulation phase: long-term goals. Why is having this long-term goals important compared to what's going on right now? Again, I'll remind us, whatever we're experiencing now will pass. The crisis will last only for a period of time. Now, those that will come out on top are those that take a long-term view. I'll go back to my example, pre-08, 08, and where we are right now. So I think we all get the gist so far, but let's talk about numbers. So I like numbers. Numbers are great. So pardon this little sketch here, but I thought I'd make it as simple as possible and not to bamboozle us with any sort of PowerPoint magic. Net worth. Why is net worth important in this equation of managing our emotions and preparing ourselves for surplus, even in a period of crisis? So let's think about it. For a lot of us on the call today, I think, most of us are between maybe early 20s, 30s, mid 30s, 40s, 45, maybe 50, right? Why is that important? Why is any of this important when we talk about net worth? So you can put yourself in a position, let's say, for instance, you have your mortgage paid, you're not paying for any car and anything else, and you've got, let's say, $500,000, right, in the bank, or in the UK terms, and this could be Canadian or US dollars, depending on what the exchange rate is. And in UK terms, you've got £400,000 in your bank. And someone says to you, oh, there's a cost of living crisis and all of that. What would be your reaction? Okay, first thing I want to know, how secure are my investments? But does it really change your life in any way? Would it make you drink your tea differently in the morning? Would it make you walk differently? No, it wouldn't do anything at all. Because why? You've got that sort of moat, and your net worth is, even if it takes a hit 10, 20%, it doesn't even matter at all, because you've got that long-term position, looking at your assets, looking at your liabilities. You have very low liabilities, very strong cash generating assets, and you're looking forward to your retirement 60 plus. I know for some of us in the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early movement, we're looking at, drawing back to that sort of 40-something timeline, but, power to us. But you have that as well to look forward to. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Is to give each and every one of us a little bit of context in terms of how do we progress towards creating this moat for us with realistic goals. Now, when Kingston gave my intro, obviously he mentioned that I've done a lot of projects and programs, and I found that the most successful of them all, cumulatively over the course of my little career, has been for the ones that had very clear objectives, and that the objectives were time-bound as well. So for each and every one of us, I'm hoping that another key takeaway is to say, do I have very clear financial objectives within the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? You could even stretch through retirement. Now, how do you determine which financial goal to set for yourself as you progress through time? Now, there is a bit of mathematics to this. Now, the idea is that when you are age 30, you should have at least 1 times your total net earning saved either in assets or in some sort of investment to generate income for you. Bear with me, and we'll do some number crunching shortly. And by the time you're age 35, you should have 2 times your net earning saved in an investment or in some sort of portfolio that generates revenue for you. And as you can see there, the number goes up all the way down to age 67. Now, these numbers are broad estimates. Personally, I would say they're very, very conservative estimates, because as we know, if you want to weather the storm, regardless of whether inflation, war, famine, or whatever will come, you would want to increase the multiple of these significantly. And we'll talk about how you can do that shortly. But just understanding, how can I set a realistic financial goal? So for each and every one of us, if you are in that sort of £50,000 bracket, so I'm going to use a UK example, for instance, you earn 50,000 gross. We all know you are not going to take 50,000 gross home. The tax man would obviously take a portion of that. You may also contribute to your pension, debatable. And then whatever is left, you pay, everybody else. And then there's that little bit that you take for yourself. How can you grow that piece to be 1 times your total net salary when you're at age 30, twice at age 35, 3 times at age 40, and so on? Key question. So now that we understand, some realistic financial goals for us to set, I'm going to ask 2 questions. Again, if you could please respond in the chat, that would be great. The first one is, how much money should you save and by what age? So please post in the chat if you can. And then the second question is the 4% rule, and I'll explain what the 4% rule is first. So the 4% rule is simply that the total amount of assets that you have generating income for you, you could only or should only take 4% of that from your total assets when you retire, right? So is your trajectory getting to that point where you can safely say, I can withdraw 4% at age 50, 55, 60, if you choose to retire at each of these points in your life? Key question. Now, one might ask, why the 4%? Why not 5% or 10%? The answer is simple. So the way money managers or investors, and I'll caveat this by saying none of this is financial advice. If you do want financial advice, go to a regulated financial advisor, lawyer, accountant. However, the 4% rule is based on the fact that the expected returns from your portfolio should be double that amount. So the average expected returns over time should be double that amount. So by taking 4% away from your total pot at retirement, you would still be able to support your lifestyle for a long period of time. Now, obviously, as we know, a lot of us are living longer and longer lives, some to their 70s, 80s plus. So, you need that money to stretch for as long as possible. So that's where the 4% safe withdrawal rate comes in, right? So now, given inflation is already at, I think for the UK, we're already at 8% base. The real inflation could be way more than that, 11, 12% plus. I'll ask the question, do we think the 4% safe withdrawal rate still applies? So please, if you could pop your questions or your answers in the chat, I would appreciate that. How much money do you think you should save and by what age? Just pick a number, pick a digit, and then we'll go with that. So let me go to the chat and see what we have. Okay, Abimbola says, £12,000. So Mibola is, can you put, oh, by age 35? Okay, great. Anyone else? Musi says annual net earnings. Yes, annual net earnings. So net earnings, tax, you've paid all your taxes. This is your amount to invest to create more value, more wealth for you moving forward. Any figures? If you could please post in the chat, I'll pick those up. Okay, so why was that question asked? Now, what I'm sharing now is some figures I pulled from the internet just to give us a bit of context with regards to average salary, both for the UK and, excuse me, both for the UK on the left and on the right is for Canada. So you can see that the average salary varies per region, which is a very important point. And the same is for Canada as well. So UK and Canada, the average salary sort of flutters between that sort of 35,000 marks to just about 44,000 mark on average, right? And then obviously for Canada, the variance is slightly larger from that sort of 49,500 mark to about 70,000 Canadian dollars mark. So there's a broad range or broader range compared to UK salary per region in both countries. Now, if we go back to our answers, so taking the net, and obviously the rate of taxation is different for both countries. Interesting enough, I actually work within the tax utility in JP Morgan, so I kind of understand the context. That said, do you really want to be tracking to that nominal rate? Again, looking at the sort of goals that we need to set for ourselves if we are to create that sort of financial moat and all-weather moat to help us thrive in time of scarcity, thrive in time of crisis, thrive in times of challenges. You know, we need to really start to look at the numbers and understand, how do I position myself moving forward? Again, a lot of these averages that we see that the governments publish are just averages, right? And I don't know about you, you flew all the way from Nigeria to the UK or to Canada. I don't think any of us left our home country or wherever we are from, South Africa or Kenya, to be average somewhere else. So again, I'll come back to a very important point one of my mentors taught me a while ago, is set the right standard for yourself. Set the right standard for yourself. So these average or averages are standards set by countries for what they believe is average. Now we need to set our own standards. And believe me, friends, brothers, sisters, whatever standard you set for yourself is what you will achieve. So I think one to bear in mind. I'll quickly go back to the chat. So Kingston's mentioned that at age 35, 70,000 base. Musi has mentioned 37, 50, 554, 52, very exact number by 30. Okay, so interesting. But how do we feel now that we've seen, what the average or averages are for both countries, the UK and for Canada, compared, I'll take a step back to what we have here in terms of what is required by age. So if you could please post your emotions, how you feel about this in the chat, I would appreciate that. Excuse me. Do you feel worried? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel happy? Some of you might be happy, if you've got if you're age 13, you've got 300,000 in the bank, you're smiling, you're like, well, I've got it covered, so no problem, Michael, relax. But share, let's understand, how are we all feeling about this, right? We've seen what the averages are, for each country. We've seen what the sort of average expectation is that we should be net worth at what age with regards to our income. How do we feel? How does that make you feel? Martina, how does that make you feel? Bonali, how does that make you feel? Eunice, how does that make you feel? Kingston, how does that make you feel? You've seen the average, you've seen what the expectation is. Hey, what's going on? How do you feel? Do you feel happy? You feel amazing, great, joyous? Let's know. Okay, we've got some responses. Okay, Abimelech mentions anxious and worried. That is totally fine. I believe me, I have been there, and I'll share a story with you. Bolale says, I need a miracle. Your miracle is on your way, Bolale. Great. So I'll tell you something. I'll share a story with you guys. And I know we're fast running out of time, so I'll make it quick. So part of what some of the actions I took pre-08, post-08 was obviously set up a couple of businesses. Some of them were successful. Some of them were total disasters. When I mean disasters, one of them, I had to close it down, and that was on my profile, AfroChef, and I keep it there as a reminder, because that business, I lost about £60,000, but it wasn't just the money. I lost some really good relationships, and it hurt. It hurt really bad, because I borrowed money from other businesses that I owned to support that business, and it didn't work out well. So, you know, I can confidently tell you that I've been in a position that I've been, well, anxious, worried, needing a miracle, and thank God, God came through for me. But again, going back to the understanding that each situation that we experience is time-bound. So whatever situation or however you're experiencing your emotion right now with regards to your financial position, in terms of obviously making a forecast towards retirement, getting through the next 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, that will change over time. But it really does depend on the actions that we take today, tomorrow, moving forward, or even actions that we've taken in the past. So just a bit of comfort for those that have been taking some action. Before we go into sort of the action part, I just wanted to share this with us that as part of our journey, you know, obviously we are all in a foreign country. We also need to understand the contexts of the different countries. And I believe that these contexts applies to both UK, Canada, right? So there are different levels in our sort of wealth journey. You have the dependency where we're, depending on mom and pop to come through for us, or uncle and aunties or whoever to come through. And you have the solvency position, which quite frankly, I think a lot of us are in that position. You know, and I say that broadly. And you have the sort of stability phase where you have that sort of extra 3,000 Canadian dollars or 2,000 you know, British pounds tucked away, just in case you get that call from back home and say, you know, yeah, you need to support the cause. So you've got that. Or, you know, your tire just, you know, blew up. You've got that. You don't need to go take a loan or use a credit card or anything like that. So you got that. And then you have that debt freedom phase, excluding mortgage, where you can say, oh, do you know what? I don't need credit cards ever. I will never need credit cards ever again. The only loan I own or owe is my mortgage. Yay. And you have this sort of annual expense, financial security, where you sort of move through time and say, okay, look, I've got a year's worth of cash, not in physical. You could buy bonds, because obviously the bonds are very, very liquid. You can always sell your bonds, never keep cash. It's my own thing, apart from that little emergency fund. So you keep that and you grow the sort of, you know, asset worth that you have for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years time, all very achievable. The beauty of it is that if you get to level 5, you can actually take a sabbatical without worrying about it. Why? Because, hey, you got yourself covered. And then you come to the financial security phase, where you've got assets, you've got businesses, you've got different things that are bringing in cash flow, and you don't even have to work. So one thing to bear in mind. And then obviously you have level 7, 8, and 9, where you got your financial independence, financial freedom, financial abundance. Abundance is I think for those Nigerians in the room, the sort of Dangote or Tedola kind of money, you know, where your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh generation are all sorted. Hey, it could be you, right? So I think it's one thing to consider that, you know, for a lot of us, we can actually set, you know, what level we want to achieve as we go through our journey. Put some context around it, you know. And I've got some questions, but I'm going to skip that. But just, I think you can take that away. You know, how do you determine what stage you are in the sort of wealth journey? And how do you move from one stage to the next? But I'm going to quickly go to 9 and 10, because I realize I've got just about 2 minutes left, actually. So 2 things, very quickly, passive or active and passive income. So I'm not going to bore you with the detail. Active income is pretty straightforward. Whatever you earn from your salary as a full-time employee, if you're a contractor or you do sort of labor stuff, you know, you get a rate, whatever job you do. And then if you sell any good or goods or item, you get that sort of replication income that comes with whatever sale you make. And you can structure that as a sole trader, or if you make it into a business, then you pay yourself a salary, i.e. remuneration from your business. But that also is an active income because you're working in that business. And then you've got the passive income, rent, royalties, rights, and also returns, right? And someone can argue, what's the difference? So obviously rent is whatever you asset that you control. You don't necessarily need to own the asset, you control it, and you're able to get a rent from that asset. And it could be a property, a residential property, a commercial property. It could be a boat. There's some investments that I'm involved in Nigeria where we rent out tugboats to oil companies, and we get, you know, a rent for renting the tugboats to those oil companies. So yeah, so there's that piece as well. Royalties, you know, if you've got like a, you know, a piece of IP you've created, music or whatever it is, you know, you get royalties from that. Someone puts it on their video or adverts, you get that. REITs, returns, you know, so you get the picture. You get a lot of opportunities to make passive income. Now, just in 2 minutes, Kingston, if you bear with me, some might be asking, you know, how do I get to the point that I move from this active column to the passive column or combine both? And friends, brothers, sisters, you cannot do it alone. You can try, but I bet you wouldn't go very far. I didn't go very far when I tried on my own. I only was able to make it really far or go a lot further because I was able to partner with a number of people that have come my way over time. Now, how you go about doing this, unfortunately, I didn't have time to put this in your slide, is to determine where your strengths are in what I call the quadrant, right? And the quadrant is, so if anyone's got a pen and paper, you just draw a cross on your paper. You figure out on one side of the quadrant, you put finance. On the other side, you put operations. And then the third side of the quadrant, you put sales and marketing. And then on the fourth side, you put IT, learning and development, or R&D. You can put that in, right? Now, your typical entrepreneur that wants to go into this passive side would want to obviously generate some income, invest, get some returns, and then you can put that into property, which is a strategy. I can explain that if time's available. But before you even start to do that, you need to determine where in this quadrant your core strengths lie. Are you very good in finance? Like, when I mean very good, like exceptional in finance, that someone wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can wake up and you can drop the numbers, no problem, no questions asked. Or are you really good in operations, understanding a system, setting up a system and make that sort of chain continue to flow? Or are you really good in sales, like, you know, speaking to people, engaging people, making sure that a product gets from the seller to the buyer and that there is an exchange of value? Or are you just good in IT or brilliant in IT? Or are you good in two, right? Now, the key thing here is when you identify which one you're amazing at and the ones that you're good at and the ones you're not so great at, that is how you choose your partners that will help you create the passive income that you so desire. Now, quickly on the strategy is, for me, what's worked is creating cash flow businesses, taking the surplus from those cash flow businesses and buying real estate. So I don't buy real estate to create income to buy more real estate. I actually create companies, buy companies to create surplus to then buy real estate to store value, leverage the value from those real estate to buy more real estate, and then you can see the chain keeps going. So in the interest of time, I've run out of time. Sorry, everyone. But you can see I'm really enthusiastic about this stuff. Quick rundown, wealth creation process. You need to create a budget. I know a lot of us don't like talking about budgets, but it's absolutely necessary. Now, if you're in a partnership, you've got a wife or husband or whatever, try as much as possible to bring them in. Now, there are different kinds of ways to budget. You have the 50, 30, 20 rule, which is 50% goes to all your expenses, 30%, sort of like that sort of middle piece, 20% you absolutely have to invest, right? And then I think number 2 goes without saying, live below your means, get rid of the credit. I don't use credit cards, never. Leave below, and believe me, you will be able to do it. You'll be able to do it. Have the emergency fund, number 3, because it gives you peace of mind. So we're talking about living crisis. You can increase that emergency fund. It will take sacrifice, but you can do it, right? Number 4, improve your skill. If you're in a job that, look, you're paying or you're earning what they call the average, get out of the average. It's not a great spot to be in. I don't think anyone wants to be in an average. And if you are in a below average position, definitely improve your skill to get out of that spot. Number 5 will be the outcome of number 4, more than likely, which is get a high paying job. Look at your network, those that are in those high paying jobs, talk to them, beg them. So your brother, sister, show me the way, review my CV. Do I need to do this? Really, really push. No pride in this. You just have to push. Look at the numbers. You need to get out of that spot. And then number 6, venture into cash flow businesses, right? It goes without saying, you've got a high income job, you would more than likely have more surplus if you're living below your means to then invest. Someone might bring a deal to you and say, oh man, look, I've got this deal, it's 30,000 Canadian dollars or 20,000 British pound, and okay, well, I'm praying for you, as opposed to, oh, can I get in on that action? I've got 5 grand, I've got 10 grand. Obviously, you have to weigh the risk and reward of that venture, but it's a different conversation if you're in that position. And then number 7, classic, speak to a financial advisor, get a wealth manager. Once you're in that position, you can then obviously trade the market, but not yourself. Someone else, professional, does it for you. So yeah, so it's a way of diversifying your portfolio. Okay, sorry, Kingston, I know I've consumed all of the time, but free to answer any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Michael. You can see the question. There's one recurring thing on the question in the chats. Credit card. They want you to talk more about it. You don't have credit cards. People here, people use it to get credit rating. I have my view, which is kind of in line with you, but speak to it.
Okay. Thank you. No, that's a very good point. So when people talk about credit rating, using credit card to improve your credit rating, that is just one way of increasing your credit rating. And then ask yourself, credit rating for how much? Now, some of us may have credit cards, 1,200, 1,500, 2,000. I've got an auntie, she's got a credit card for 20,000. And my auntie, you never use this. Why do you keep it? It's like, oh, it's just improve my credit. Well, she's not paying anything for it anyway, but I get it. There are other ways to improve your credit rating, right? There's so many ways to improve your credit rating, positively improve your credit rating. Number 1 is with regards to the accounts that you hold with any bank or financial institution. So for me, I have business accounts. I have my current accounts with a bank called Barclays, and they can see the cash flow in and out. Now, for some of us in the UK, based on the cash flow in and out of your personal and corporate account, you would start to see this ping. They will be pinging you and say, oh, do you want to take a loan of 100,000? Or do you want to take a loan of 200,000? I'm thinking, are you mad? Can't you see my bank balance? So there are positive ways for you to increase your credit rating without taking a credit card. Explore those. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, I hope so. Can we have a session on credit ratings, credit cards? Okay, we'll try to organize that.
Yes.
It's not within it's not within this time, but we will try to do that. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any other question? You can type it, or you just unmute quickly and ask, but you have to keep it short, straight to the point. Anyone? If not, I have a question, Michael.
Yes, go
there was a
ahead.
slide you showed, the one that had the different stages of financial stability.
Yes.
If you could please pull it up.
Okay, here we go. Do you want level 1 to 6, or you want to go higher?
I definitely want to be at the top of that list, but I'm not there yet. So for how do we, this question I'm just asking for myself or any other person. So there's dependency, solvency, stability. Does it have to go according to this order, or can one jump from 1 to maybe 4, or is this like a guide?
I would say it's more like a guide. The possibility of skipping, so say for instance, you are in that sort of solvency or stability phase, and you skip to financial security. Obviously, you can see that in order for you to skip from stability to financial security, you would have met the criterias of 4 and 5 within a very short period of time, right? Which is very possible. So, for some of us that do government contracts, and when I mean government contracts here in the UK, because yes, you can actually, provide services to UK governments, councils. They have open portals for people to tender for contracts. You can do that. So you can get a really lucrative contract with a very decent margin, and that would push you, along the level a lot quicker, and also from companies as well.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
We still have some time for any question. Anyone?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to jump in and say that for a lot of people, and I think that, like you said, it's a journey, but for many people who maybe have just migrated, and I think quite a number of people are in that category, what would you advise to set a path for this world journey? For so many people who had maybe business or savings in Nigeria, probably had to sell off investments, liquidate stuff to be able to migrate, and then they're in a new country, trying to settle down. How do you think that we can, take this journey in a way that, in 5 we can start climbing that ladder? Yeah.
Thank you. So what I would suggest is see yourself as already on that journey. The question I'll rephrase that is, I think, just going back to Kingston's point, how do I move up this level quicker, right? So like yourself, obviously, I wasn't born in this country. I actually immigrated here when I was 20 or just before 20, so reasonably young. And I had to make my way all the way through. Now, the first thing that helped me was to set my goals, and set my goals even when I decided to take a partner. So for some of us that are in relationships, we have partners, we have kids, you can set your goals with all your sort of family connections involved. So because that gives you a sort of realistic picture of what you need to do. I wouldn't say when you can achieve it, what you need to do. So say, for instance, you've got kids, you're going to put them through school, you can support them at a certain point. You've got a husband, you've got a wife, and, they need certain support. Aiming for just doing the sort of e-marketing thing, to generate maybe an extra 10, 20K is not going to cut it. So you now need to start saying, okay, look, how much exactly do I need to make or earn from what sources and when? So it's actually looking at your full set of sort of relationships or liabilities or whatever you have, and then setting your targets along with that. And then I'll come down to just to add to that point, determine what strategy will work for you. Now, for me, the first thing I focused on was actually creating a lot of cash flow businesses. So I didn't jump on the bandwagon of, oh, I need to buy more properties or do the buy-to-let thing. No, because I understood very, very quickly that cash is king. The more money you have in, you can actually buy whatever you want, whenever you want. So understand your liabilities and then create a strategy that works for you. If you're in a married relationship or you've got a partner, please bring them in, because it's going to cause a lot of friction if you don't. And then you can actually move together as a family on that journey. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Very helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Micheal. Pleasure having you. Short, sharp, straight to the point. Points well taken. I have my notes, and I believe others have taken something away from this session as well. It's good to have you. Thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone that was able to join as well. I hope it's been useful. We will end the session here. I just hope it's been useful to you. Take the notes, take the learnings, apply it. It may not be blanket application. It may be one aspect of it that applies to you and another applies to someone else. But whatever it is, let the learning not be a waste. It's 1 hour spent here. There should be value from it in your own personal life, you know. So it's good to have you. Thank you very much, and have a lovely
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.